We've spent some time in the previous section discussing arrays in Java. An array is mutable, and we saw that while we could set or change values in the array, we couldn't resize the array. Just like the string builder class provides a resizable way to handle text, Java gives us several classes that let us add and remove items and resize a sequence of elements. These classes are said to implement a list's behavior. So what is a list? Intuitively, we all know what a list is. In our everyday life, we use lists all the time. When we're going to the grocery store, we've got a list. We have a list of things we need to do, a list of addresses, a list of contact numbers, etc. It wouldn't be a very useful list, however, if we started with 10 items that could be changed, but then couldn't add or remove an entry from that list. A list is a special type in Java called an interface. We'll have a whole section on interfaces coming up in the next section of this course. For now, I'll say a list interface describes a set of method signatures that all list classes are expected to have. Let's look at some of these methods. I'm going to pull up the list methods in Java's API documentation page in a browser. Some of these methods may remind you of some of the methods we saw on the string builder class. You can see the methods add, contains, index of, and last index of, for example. But there are many more methods. These are methods available on any class that uses a list interface. A class can use or implement an interface, which means it agrees to have the methods that the interface describes. If I scroll to the top of this page, you can see the names of the classes that use this interface: abstract list, array list, copy on write array list, linked list, stack, and so on. Of these classes, the array list is probably the most commonly used class here, and is the one we'll focus on next. The array list is effectively a resizable array. If I scroll down and look at the methods, they look just like the methods we saw on list. This means we can say an array list implements the list's interface methods. The array list is a class that maintains an array in memory that's actually bigger than what we need in most cases. It keeps track of the capacity or maximum size of the array in memory, but it also keeps track of the elements that have been assigned or set, which is the size of the array list. As elements are added to an array list, its capacity may need to grow. This occurs for you automatically behind the scenes. This is why the array list is resizable. I'll create some code and walk you through a demonstration using an array list to manage a grocery list. I've created a new project called Array Lists. In the main.java source file, above the main method, I want to create a record called grocery item. If you remember, we can do this using the type record instead of class, and at its simplest, we pass the fields we want for the record in the declarations parentheses. Record, grocery item parentheses, string name, string type, int count parentheses. Okay, that's our grocery item record with 3 fields: name, type, and count. Remember that a default constructor is created for us here. It takes all the fields as parameters. But let's say 9 times out of 10, count will have a value of 1, and I want a simpler way to create one of these records. I can add a custom constructor to records to achieve this, public grocery item with string name as the parameter, and I'll chain a call to the default constructor using name the literal string dairy and 1 as the arguments. This constructor takes only one field, the grocery item name. For a record, I have to call the generated default constructor first with all 3 fields. Here I call this and pass the name and 2 other fields. Making it all uppercase, I've set the type for now to dairy and the count to 1. Now I'll go to the main method and create an array. I'm going to do what I told you not to do previously, which is create an array of object. You'll understand why I'm doing this shortly. Object array grocery array equals new object with a size of 3 elements. Grocery array element 0, I'm calling a custom constructor to assign a new grocery item with the argument of a string literal milk. For element 1, I'll call the default constructor to assign another grocery item using the arguments the literal strings apples and produce, and 6. Here I have a grocery array, and I've set it to a size of 3, meaning I can contain a maximum of 3 items. I'm assigning the first 2 elements to instances of my new grocery item record. The first element is created by calling a custom or explicit one-argument constructor, and the second by calling the default implicit constructor. The first instance only takes name as its argument, the second one takes type and count as well. I'm going to add another element to this array. Grocery array element 2 equals the literal string 5 oranges. I will print the array using arrays.toString. Here you can see that I've set the element to a string and not a grocery item at all. And because I've said I have an array of objects and not an array of grocery items, the compiler isn't going to prevent us from doing this. Any code now that expects this array to contain only grocery items will likely have a problem processing this data. Let's run the code to review the output. As you can see, for my grocery items, we also know what department we might find that item in, but in the case of the string, it just prints 5 oranges. I can easily fix this by making the array an array of grocery item. I'll change the array from an array of object to an array of grocery item. You'll notice right away that now the compiler won't let me just assign a string to the third element of this array. I need to change that and properly set it to an instance of a new grocery item to keep the compiler happy. Grocery array element 2 equals new grocery item, and I'll call the default constructor with the arguments oranges, produce, and 5. And the compiler is happy with that change. Declaring your arrays with a specific type allows compile time type checking, as you can see here. Type checking at compile time prevents runtime exceptions when instances assigned to arrays aren't what they are expected to be. Enough about arrays, let's look at creating a grocery list using the ArrayList class instead of an array. ArrayList object list equals new ArrayList and parentheses. I don't have an error, but what I want you to notice straight away that IntelliJ is highlighting the ArrayList class in yellow, which is its way of warning us about something. If I hover my mouse over that class, IntelliJ gives me the message, raw use of parameterized class ArrayList. So what does that mean? Well, in truth, it's a lot like the example I just walked through with the array of object. If I don't specify a type with an array list, it's going to use the object class by default. This is called the raw use of a type. This will result in the same kind of problems we have just discussed when I had an object array, meaning any object at all could be put in this array list. I'll add some entries to the array list. Object list.add, and the argument will be new grocery item, and its argument will be butter. Object list.add, but this time the argument is a string literal yogurt. Here I'm adding elements using the add method on ArrayList. First, I add a grocery item, but I'm also adding a string with this second add method call. A string may not be what the code wants or is expecting. Doing things this way is generally not what we want to do. When you declare an array list, you probably know what data you want in that list. In my case, it's a grocery item record, and I don't want anything else but grocery items in that list. So how do we specify a type for an array list? Array list, and in angle brackets, grocery item, grocery list equals new array list, with grocery item in angle brackets again, and then parentheses. Here I've used angle brackets and specified the type for the array list. This is the type I want all elements in this list to be, a grocery item record. I've included this type immediately following the ArrayList class in the declaration of the variable on the left. I've also specified this in the instantiation of this list on the right of the assignment operator. I'll hover over that second grocery item class on the right side of the assignment in IntelliJ. And notice here that IntelliJ is telling us this second reference to grocery item, which is called an explicit type argument, is unnecessary. In this case, I'll use IntelliJ's recommendation and change this by selecting Replace With when I hover over that second set of angle brackets, and that gets replaced with empty angle brackets. These angle brackets, when empty like this, are called the diamond operator. Later I'll be talking about type arguments in a lot of detail when we review generics, but right now you should type your array list declarations as I show here. With this declaration, the compiler can do compile time type checking because I've specified that I only want grocery items in my grocery list. I'll copy the 2 lines I used above and paste them here, changing the name of the array to grocery list in both statements. And now you can see the compiler won't let me add a string object to this list. If I hover over that, we see that grocery item is the required type. I'll remove that last line of code. The other thing you might have noticed in this statement is that I never specified a size for the list. An array list is a resizable array implementation, meaning it's not a fixed size, so we don't need to specify the number of elements it will have. It will grow automatically as needed. Okay, that's enough for this video, and I'll end it here. I've talked about a few of the similarities and differences between a Java array and the ArrayList class in the java.util package. In the next video, we'll work more with the ArrayList class.